2. This will be solving cube root equations. Our objective is to solve cube root equations by using inverse operations. So a little quick review of those inverse operations. Yesterday we saw that the opposite of something that is being square rooted is squaring it. So the opposite of cube rooting it is not squaring it. That's the top one. When we have a cube root, we cube it. So that is what we're going to be looking at, solving those types of equations today. Let's look at the steps. Very similar to the steps from yesterday. The steps to solve cube root equations: first off, get everything from the outside of that cube root to the other side. So move everything over by adding, subtracting first, then multiply, dividing. Then undo the cube root and cube both sides. So that is when you have the cube root all by itself, just like we did yesterday. And then if you need to, solve for what is left. All right, let's see this in action. First one up, example 1. 2 times the cube root of x plus 1 equals 5. So again, don't forget that first step is to move everything away from the cube root. So let's find out where that cube root is. Oops, I didn't want to do that. My bad. Press the wrong button. There we go. So I'm going to box in my cube root. There it is. And I need to first move everything over by first adding or subtracting. So we're going to minus 1 first. Write down what we have. We got 2 times the cube root of x is equal to 4. This is a cube root. So make sure you draw 3 and make sure that 3 is different than, of course, the 2 and differently looking different because it's a cube root. It should go right by the radical. Then, of course, our cube root is not by itself. So now we need to undo the 2 that's being multiplied here, and we're going to divide both sides by 2. We now get the cube root of x is equal to 2. Now that the cube root is all by itself, and we can box and double check, yep, there's nothing else with it on that side, we now can cube both sides. Because how do you undo the cube root? Yeah, cube both sides. So this cube's going to cross out with that cube root, which just gives me my x, and it's equal to, well, what's 2 to the third power? That's 2 times 2 times 2, which gives us a positive 8. We don't need to solve what is left because x has already been isolated for us. There you go. Next example, number 2. 3 times the cube root of x plus 9 equals 36. So I'm going to go ahead and have you try this one out since it's just like example 1. So go ahead and pause this video and try this out now. Pause. Here's the correct answer for number 2. So first we had a minus 9 over. Then we divided by 3. We got our cube root by itself right here. So then we cubed both sides. Got x on the left-hand side. And then 9 cubed was 9 times 9 times 9, which is 729. Again, x has already been solved for, so we don't need to continue to solve for what is left. Example 3. Let's work this one together. So again, we're going to box in the whole cube root. And this time it's not just x. There's x minus 2 there. Again, it's not by itself, so we got to get rid of this negative 3 that's being multiplied. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 3. And we're going to have now the cube root of x minus 2 is equal to 7. Now the cube root is by itself on that side. So now we can just go ahead and kill it by cubing both sides, or raising both sides to the power of 3. This cube is going to cross out with that cube root, which just gives us the inside x minus 2 is equal to, and 7 cubed is 343. We're going to continue to solve for x, since x is not by itself, by adding 2 over to both sides. And we get our final answer of x equals 345. Look at that. Looks lovely, sweet, beautiful. Love it. Moving on. Example 4. We'll do this one together, and I'm going to have you do 5. So again, go ahead. We're going to box in that cube root. Again, we got to move everything away from it. So we're going to minus 15 first, because we always add, subtract before we multiply, divide. So now I got 3 times the cube root of 5x minus 4 is equal to negative 21. Then we'll continue to go with this. And since the 3 is being multiplied, we're going to divide by that 3, because remember the cube root is still not by itself. Let me box it in there. So let's divide both sides by that 3 that's in front. We now get the cube root of 5x minus 4 is equal to negative 7. Now yesterday we stopped at this point because we had a radical equal a negative. Well, this time it's a cube root equaling a negative, and that is actually possible. You can actually take the cube root of a number and have it be negative. So this is not extraneous. This is still good because it's a cube root. If it was an even root, we can't do it. But since the root is odd, like 3, 5, 7, 9, and yes, you'll be taking the knife roots of stuff, that happens, it can be a negative. So we're going to continue solving for this. Again, now that the cube root is by itself, we are now going to cube both sides to kill that cube root. So raise both sides to the power of 3. The cube root crosses out with the cube, so then we just get the inside of 5x minus 4 is equal to, well, negative 7 cubed is going to be a negative something. It's going to be a big number, I know that. Parentheses, negative 7, cube it, we get negative 343. And then we continue to solve by isolating for x. So we're going to add 4 over first. We now have 5x is equal to, and I got to add 4 to this negative value, which gives me negative 339. And then, of course, divide by the 5 to get the x all by itself to get our answer of x equals a negative 339 over 5. And there we have it. Wham, bam, thank you, man. So again, with the cube roots, there is no extraneous type of solutions because the root is an odd number. It's a cube. It's a 3. It's a third root. So if it's a square root, we have to worry about extraneous ones, as well as if it's a 4th root, 6th root, 8th root, 10th root, all the even roots. If they're odd roots, it's okay for that instant to happen. All right, continuing on. I told you number 5 was yours to do. It's just like number 4. So go ahead and try this one out, please. Pause the video now. Pause. Here's the correct answer for 5. All worked out nice and neatly. We first had to subtract that 1 over. Then we divided by 2. We got the cube root by itself. So then we cubed both sides. We got x minus 4 equals a negative 343. Added 4 on both sides. We got x equals negative 339. Example 6. I'll work this one out with you. We'll do one more together here. So we're going to, again, isolate the cube root by boxing around it and then getting everything away from it. So we're going to add 10 first. We got 5 times the cube root of 2x minus 3 equals 35. Then, of course, since the cube root is still not by itself, we have a 5 out in front attached to it, which means it's multiplying. So we're going to do the inverse and divide. Oops, that's a horrible looking 5. Looks like a 6 there, my bad. We're going to divide both sides by 5. We get now the cube root of 2x minus 3 equals 7. Now that the cube root is by itself, and we know this because if we box it in, there is nothing else that is being next to this box. So we're now going to do the opposite of a cube root, and we're going to cube both sides, raising it to, again, the power of 3. This cancels out the root on the left-hand side, so we just get the inside, the 2x minus 3. And over here we have this 7 cubed again, which we've seen already once, not twice, but I think 3 times a day, and it's 343. Continue solving for what's left over to get the x all by itself. So we're going to add 3 to both sides. So now we got 2x equals 346. And then now divide both sides by 2 to get the x all by itself, which whatever half of 3, 4, 16, which I think is 173. If I did it right in my head, I'm going to use a calculator to find out here. But 346 divided by 2 is 173. We are right. We are golden. We are good. Remember, you can always take your answer and plug it back in. because it needs to work out. All right, number 6 done. Moving on. Number 7. Let's see. I'll do one more, and then we're going to have you practice some more. So let's again isolate the cube root here. We'll add 5 to both sides. If you are good, go ahead and pause it, and then you can just fast forward to my answer. We have 4 times the cube root of 3 is equal to 24. There we go. The cube root is still not by itself. The 4 is being multiplied, so we're going to divide both sides by 4. And we get now the cube root of x equals 6. Now the cube root is by itself. I can box it in C. So that means I'm going to do the inverse of cube root and cube both sides. This will cancel out. We get our x by itself. It's already isolated. Cool. So all we have to do is what 6 cubed is, which is 6 times 6 times 6. Or 6 to the 3rd power, which is 216. Awesome. Now number 8. This one is yours to do. So go ahead and pause this video and try number 8 out, please. Pause. Correct answer for number 8 is x equals 343. We add 10 to both sides first, then divide both by 5, then we cubed both sides to get that answer. Number 9. Let's work out one more together here. So we're going to box in that cube root. It's not by itself, which means we need to first add 5 to both sides. I now get the cube root of 2x minus 3 equals 15. The cube root is now by itself. There's nothing else on that side. So now we're going to take the whole thing and cube it to kill off that radical 3, or the cube root, really. So again, that cancels that out. So we get what's in the inside, which is 2x minus 3 is equal to, and 15 cubed, I don't even know that one, calculus in with that. So 15 to the 3rd power is huge, 3,375. So we're going to continue to solve for x by first adding 3 to this giant number. 2x is equal to 3,378 because 3 and 5 make 8. It's not that hard to do. It's an even number, so when I do this step and divide by 2 to get the x all by itself, she'll come out nice and neat and give me a pretty decent value here. So let's do that. We added 3 to make that, and then divided by 2 to make that 1689, 1,689. Awesome possum. Now the last one is yours to do, number 10. So go ahead and pause the video and try it out, please. Pause. So the final answer for number 10 is x equals 122. So again, we had to first isolate the radical of the cube root, this time by first adding 20 to both sides. Then we need to divide both sides by 4 to get the cube root of x plus 3 by itself. Once it was by itself, we cubed both sides, got x plus 3 equals 125, minus the 3 over, and got our answer of x equals 122. So your next step is, of course, to get that awesome perfect practice that should have been up right here, but I'm going to write out perfect practice. Which I know some of you just skip and think you're good, and then you get to that quiz and make boo-boo errors, and it's like, well, should have got some more practicing, kid. Or raise your hand when you had no clue what the notes were over. But it's all right. We still love you. So go ahead and do the perfect practice problems. The nice, beautiful Google slides will be right here. I'll say like 9.2, something like that, and a big, huge button that says, of course, start. So go ahead and be awesome. Again, thank you for today. You're amazing.